So we have a cute little feature here that we're going to start off with. And it is, we're going to listen to Pentacles by Stephen Heller.
The suit of Pentacles always stands for, at least, let's say, the manner in which the psyche comes to focus itself and express itself in the material universe, within a material medium. So anything that is physical, beginning with the physical body, will always be symbolized by pentacles. Well, what do we nourish the physical body by, and so forth? It's food. How do we buy the food in modern times? By money. Money is really just a sort of food made abstract. And so, obviously, money and financial resources pertain to pentacles. Anything that has to do with our senses, with the five senses, relates to pentacles. And the manner in which our consciousness, including what psychology would call the unconscious, expresses itself in the material world, also pertains to pentacles. So what do we have there? Art, craft. Both the artist and the craftsman express themselves with something physical. There is nothing physical, then we don't have either art or craft. All of these things, therefore, pertain to the suit of pentacles. So now the ace of pentacles would, of course, be as it has been called classically, the root of the powers of earth. So the strongest concentration of physical force will be found in the ace of pentacles. When you want to begin a business enterprise, if you are about to engage in the ever hazardous kind of pursuit of entrepreneurship, when you have an ace of pentacles in your tarot reading, it would be favorable for that. Similarly, it would be favorable for undertaking, let's say, an artistic project. You are about to write a book, paint a painting, sculpt a sculpture, start making a film or whatever you may be engaged in. The ace of pentacles would give you the good aspect for that, the concentration, the initial concentration of energy that is necessary to begin anything. To start something requires a lot more energy usually than to continue it, because you are up against all kinds of resistances, external and internal. Everybody will tell you, oh no, you don't want to do that. And there is the resistance of other people. You must be out of your mind, wanting to do that. And there are similar and perhaps even more pernicious voices within you, questioning your ability of being able to do that, and so forth. Whatever people, these sort of very optimistic, dewy-eyed, kind of spaniel-eyed, slobbering, happy, tail-wagging people will tell you, whom I'm sure you encounter here and there, the world doesn't want you to create anything. The world wants you to let things be. And this is sort of true both in the abstract, or just the world, and when it comes down to other people, to governments, public agencies, corporations, your friends, your enemies in between, Nobody wants you to do anything, except maybe something for them that might benefit them. Rather, there seems to be an almost a kind of universal conspiracy to keep you in an obscure and not particularly enjoyable place in this world. And if you want to change that situation, then you have to exert yourself. You have to do something about it. And so that energy, that get up and go to start something, that is what you will find in the ace, in all of the aces, but in this case, when you want to start something on the physical level. Similarly, let's see if you're talking about health, Certainly an Ace of Pentacles would indicate that there is energy. There is vital energy coming into the body of a strong nature. You will also find that in most of the decks of the tarot, at least the traditionally designed ones, in all the aces we have a hand that comes out of the clouds, out of the sky, holding the particular instrument of that suit. Now, what does that mean? It means that all the suits of the tarot, the powers that are symbolized by the suits of the tarot, originate in a high and holy source. We can say that the wands are better than the swords, or that the swords are better than the cups, or the cups better than the pentacles, or any arrangement. They all come from the same place. They are the four modifications of, transcendental and divine power. And that puts them all sort of on an equal basis. They are equally important. Carl Jung will tell you that if you are deficient seriously in any one of your four psychological functions, the four psychological functions of the ego, which correspond to the suits of the tarot in after a fashion, namely sensation, feeling, thinking, and intuition, then you are pretty much of a psychological cripple. You have to know how to function according to each one of those. A fully rounded person knows how to act physically, knows how to feel, knows how to think, and knows how to use his intuition. Now, it doesn't mean that we'll be able to do maybe all of those with equal facility, but one has to be able to function in each one of the functions.
Well, I I don't have much to add to what Dr. Heller said. Clearly, the aces, when considered in light of the tree of life, the aces are all influenced by Kether, the crown. So this comment pretty much takes another shot at what Dr. Heller said about the high source. According to that placement on the tree of life, the Kabbalistic view is that this is coming from the ultimate source, from God, if that's what your your perception of that ultimate source is. So it's I think it's always something that that is good. We don't get into the effect of the cards being reversed and how we consider things. I think it's interesting. I don't know what to say about the meaning of it, but that pentacles and swords, so the physical and the mental are coming from the left side of the card, and the emotional and the spiritual with cups and wands are coming from the right hand side of the card. It's interesting too that the way they're being held in each case is a little bit different. But so I always consider the aces to be something that's very primal. As Dr. Heller commented, it is also symbolic to me of starting something. So I think that it has some implications for the initiatory aspect of looking at tarot. That this is very much the beginning place and the goal toward which you're striving through initiation.
We had a little fun with the aces on Wednesday when we and it would be probably a good exercise throughout all the cards as we go to take a look at the idea of imagine let's say each of the aces, but we'll start with the pentacles. Imagine it on the left hand side of a 3 card where we're recommended to avoid that, and then versus it being on the right hand side the recommended approach, and that will always be an interesting twist of meaning as we just look at cards outside of the actual divinatory process. But as synchronistically there, Jeriel, or just we're all on such a similar track that it was pointed out by others, maybe led by Allison, about the four hands, and somebody else mentioned that they are in different postures. The two that look a little bit similar would be the Pentacles and Cups, a kind of an open palm, but on one the thumb is facing us, and on the other one the thumb is away from us. So the interesting variety of imagery there. The almost four totally different ways of looking at the mysterious hand coming out of the clouds.
Yeah, they are all the right hand, and it certainly looks to me like in Pentacles and Cups, it's being offered, and in Swords and Wands, it looks much more like it's being wielded. And I assume when you were saying the left and the right, you're talking about cards 12 and 13 in the Celtic spread.
Yes, which is, of course, a derivative of the traditional little 3-card spread, right, where the central card speaks about the subject. The left-hand card tells us an approach that we are vulnerable to doing, that we should avoid, and the card on the right being a prognosis. So I think, for example, I might have commented about the let's say the Ace of Pentacles on the left of don't abandon what you've already worked on and start over. And obviously on the right-hand side, it would be cultivate, look for that fresh start, that look for the energy that is unfettered by complication. As you mentioned, it comes out of the top of the tree, which of course the energy comes from even beyond that, the three mysterious regions beyond the beginning of the tree. But certainly in Kether, it is completely and utterly unfettered by complication, and still very pure.
The suit of Wands. The Ace of Wands, an intuitive force. What is intuition? Intuition has been defined by Jung again as a function of the psyche whereby remote origins and ultimate ends are discerned. That which is not available to the other functions, which is sort of beyond the horizon of the senses, of the feelings, and of the thinking, that is what you discern with intuition. In terms of the tarot and in terms of divination, this primarily means the kind of quality of foresight and insight which makes any kind of enterprise in this world succeed. That is why in your classical descriptions of tarot, you will find that they always say enterprise connected with wands. Well, you cannot really undertake any kind of a project, at least not successfully to any degree, without the intuition that discloses to you that this project has potential, has possibility. And when you have the strongest concentration of this insightful and foresight-producing kind of function, then you have the Ace of Wands. So generally, what would we say? The aces are generally benevolent. They are good. And no matter what position in your tarot spread you find any of the four aces, it will generally be to your advantage or to the advantage of the projects that you are dealing with, because there you will have a strong concentration of energy in any of these four areas. Of course, you may keep in mind that that energy may need to be balanced by others, that when one has a lot of aces, then one may need to cut down a little bit on the way in which one goes about expressing one's energy, that one might be guilty of excess and so forth, but they are generally a benevolent situation.
Yeah, the spiritual is what I associate with wands. I think they have some interesting stuff. There's a castle distant on the hills, and I that always reminds me of my Masonic backgrounds, where we talk about our lives in terms of the materials and the tools of constructing stone edifices, and this castle here would represent to me a fulfillment in that kind of a practice. So I think that it symbolizes a spiritual life well lived in that regard. The hand, I don't know back when this imagery was created, but thumbs up is almost a universal symbol now of approval, and that being something very positive, which of course just underlines the basic emphasis of the ace cards as being really fortuitous and good, all the qualities that we associate with the supreme being. It I would be interested in what anybody thinks about the little growths that are coming out, the leaves, and there are 3 sprigs that come out, 3 on each side and 4 on the top, and then there are 8 that are in free flight. I'm not quite sure what to make of those, but they're too prominent not to have some significance. I would think that they would represent growth and verdant life force.
They're all the the other 2, let's say non-pentacle. Pentacle doesn't have anything other than maybe a good deal of irradiance coming from the hand, but the sword and with perhaps those little yods, or the Hebrew letters seem to be, they seem to be quivering in the air, and it could be thought that in the Ace of Wands, these leaves are every bit alive, even if they are not attached. They are fluttering about, and just so a similar amount of energy seems to be, the dynamic is present in the other cards as well. Of course, especially the cups with so many watery yods, perhaps raindrops, but
Yeah, I always think of the images on the cups as drops of water, and I've thought of the 6 things there, the 3 on either side of the swords, to be licks of flame, and of course these 4 suits represent as well the 4 classic elements. The cups, water; the pentacles, earth; the swords, air; and wands, fire. So that, on the other hand, I just associated the ones on the swords as being fire, and of course, element-wise, it's air. So I think that might be something idiosyncratic to myself, that the fire and the sword. But the sword also has the atop of it the crown. So there's a bit of regality that I would associate with the swords. It really represents, as well as the intellect. It represents power in a way that the cups represent love, and the pentacles wealth, and the wands intuition. Cups being emotional. Maybe those are particular feelings or things that we feel emotional about. They also have 5 streams of water coming out of the top. And you have the dove, a universal symbol of peace.
Let us go ahead and have Dr. Heller jump in on this card of cups. What do you
Great
think?
idea.
The Ace of Cups in the weight deck, which is the one we have here, is a particularly beautiful one. A hand holds a cup or chalice, upon which is inscribed the letter W for water. Out of it flow several streams, sort of the overflow of the abundance of the waters of life. And into the chalice from above, from the heavens, descends a dove holding a communion wafer, the sacred host of the Western Rite Church, in his beak. And below it there are some waters. This is taken from the Grail legendary, in fact, where it is said that the sacred substance, the holy blood in the cup of the Grail, is renewed, is reconsecrated every year on Good Friday, when a dove, the symbol of the Holy Spirit, comes from heaven and drops a consecrated bread, a consecrated wafer, into the chalice. So here the sacredness of the cup is greatly emphasized. But once again, what are cups? These are the powers of water, and I think in our psychological analog, we might say that we are dealing here with the power of feeling or emotion. No doubt many of you are aware that when you get sort of into 19th century kind of Victorian literature of occult or esoteric nature, then emotion is often looked down upon as something not particularly nice, because it was a period when people mistrusted their feelings, and they thought that they would make tremendous strides both personally and collectively in the world by way of their thinking function. Well, we saw where that landed us, and now we are kind of have come to the point that it might be something to feelings again. But being a kind of flaky extremist lot that we are, since the 60s or so we have gone a bit overboard on feelings again. And so it's sort of feelings, wow, feelings, we get tremendously involved with that, and then again we find ourselves in an extreme position. Because none of the functions in themselves and of themselves, when not balanced by the others, are all that productive. In any event, the root of the powers of water, the feeling function here, indicates that this is really the irrigation of our lives. Without an abundant and, I dare say, elevated and sanctified feeling life, our lives are going to dry up, and we are going to have a wasteland of the soul kind of experience. Because the other functions cannot do what the feelings can. The feelings make things grow in our lives, just like the waters. And so, to be practical now, when we have the Ace of Cups in a tarot reading, once again we have the strongest initial primordial concentration of feeling energy that we can have in our lives. So whenever we have that, we are well aspected, let's say, for any undertaking where great demands are made on our feelings. If you have an Ace of Cups, let's say, when you are about to enter a love affair or any other intense emotional experience, or heaven forbid, a marriage, then you will be well aspected for that. Your heart is open. Your heart is capable of allowing these feeling tone energies to flow forward. And similarly, anywhere else, it's the openness of the heart, the activity of the feelings, of the emotions that would be, and in a very, very concentrated, very powerful fashion.
And above the water, what I was reminded of was during the ark sequence in the Bible, the sign to Noah and his family and all the animals and everything, that they were going to survive this, that they were going to come through it, was when the dove shows up. Some people think it's a gull or something, but I think this is very suggestive of that that kind of thing. That it's again a very optimistic thing. It shows in Freemasonry the ritual before it became involved with the building of King Solomon's temple had at one time been the building of Noah's Ark, and it remains a symbol in the third degree of Freemasonry, the ark and the anchor, and the ark represents life being tossed and turned like a ship at sea, and the anchor representing when you come into safe harbor. That's why the observant lodge that I helped found 3 years ago is called Anchor Bell, and for those kind of reasons. But yeah, this is a very religious kind of imagery, and especially as Dr. Heller pointed out. Seeing the Grail as what that particular cup represents, and all that rich imagery that from all of the Grail legends.
Let's visit the last of the aces with Dr. Heller, and here he is.
The essential qualities of swords have to do with something tough. They have to do with the sharpness, the combativeness, the martial power of the functions of the psyche. With the swords, one can wound and destroy. One can also wound and destroy oneself. But at the same time, let's say the sword can also be used to clear the territory, like the machete or something like that in the jungle. So without the swords in one's spread, one doesn't have the instrument whereby obstacles are overcome. That is why, let's say, in any kind of a situation, what might be called the weapon of one's nature, the defenses of the defense force of one's character needs to be present. Probably no better metaphor for that. I wished it were only a metaphor. We all wished it were only a metaphor. Exists in our contemporary world when we are experiencing these terrible illnesses as the result of what? As the result of the breakdown of the immune system of the physical body. The immune system of the physical body is the defense force. That's the Pentagon, and all that goes with it. And if you want to know what happens when someone unilaterally disarmed, then just look at what happens when the immune system breaks down. You see, one can, once again, one can have all kinds of sort of airy-fairy, super pacifist ideas about these things. The fact of the matter is, while you are on this earth, you're always going to experience attacks of some sort. You may not invite them, you may run away from them, you may even stick your head into the sand or the snow or whatever happens to be around after the fashion of the ostrich. Something is going to be after you. Microbes, bacteria, people, cockroaches, ants, nasty birds, malicious neighborhood cats, coyotes, and you go on from there. Something is always going to go after you. And so you have to have that sword, whatever that sword happens to be under the circumstances. Certainly very often in this world when we use the sword, we are using our minds. Because we live in a mental age, and with the sharpness, the ability of our minds, we can defend ourselves. But here again, the strongest concentration of that sharp, focused force, which exists at the mental level, which exists at the physical level, everywhere, that will be in the Ace of Swords.
There are two other things that, I don't know, I may have more question than comment. One of them is that looking at the landscape below, compared to the others, this is you notice there's very little to suggest greenery in the landscape as there is in all three of the other cards, and all of these mountains that we're seeing are very light at the top. It looks like the middle group of them are like snow covered, but it's all kind of suggestive of snow covering in all of those. I think that it kind of implies that this is in some high region, and of course the mind is one of our higher capacities, and then up above is where we do see green, and we see two different kinds of plant coming off of either side of the crown. The left one has berries on it, and the right one is much thicker foliage, but without any berries. I'm not quite sure what to make of that, but going back to the era when these cards were formed, I have a feeling that maybe this card had been representative somehow or another of the divine right of kings to wield power, having that crown at the top, or maybe that's supposed to be that God has got the only crown that's really meaningful. I'm not sure how to take that, and how much my intuition about it has to do with my attitude toward religion versus spirituality.
I really enjoyed your what you said about the terrain. It all looks rather foreboding. If that is like it looks like maybe very turbulent sea all around these rather foreboding mountains that don't look very easy to live on or climb up. It looks like one could slip and fall off one of those mountains into a turbulent sea. Well, the suit of swords, as we will be going through them, certainly are rather treacherous and turbulent, and but that's a very interesting observation, and that's kind of certainly facilitated by our ability to display and observe these cards in a nice blown up manner.
Maybe the mountains are also a little bit reminiscent of Shangri-La. That up in the bleak mountains, there is this spiritual core that defies the height and the thin air and the snow, and is, so it could actually be a bit of an inference about heaven. Another thing I don't believe in. But symbolically and psychologically and spiritually, the concept of heaven has great significance. I just don't think that people live there like people. The whole anthropomorphization of the spiritual world, I think, is an unfortunate relic of us getting it inside out about us being made in the image of God rather than the other way around. I just think that humanity bails itself out a little too cheaply to be thinking that everything that's going on is being done by some higher power that's like us, and I don't think we're nearly enough like that higher power. I think that higher power is something for us to aspire to, but and I think that we are definitely a part of it. For the longest time, while the Catholic Church ruled the world, well, they were the rulers of kings as well, right? That was part of the whole idea of the divine right of kings, was that they too had to kneel before the church, but it's too easy to say whatever happens is because there's this higher human power that's making human-like decisions. And you see in the Old Testament, God gets really angry at his people and punishes them and all of this kind of thing. I think it makes it casts humans in a much more helpless light than our actual resistance or existence. That was a Freudian slip, if there ever was one.
I would like to then, if everybody's ready, would move on and hear Dr. Heller started off with the suit of Pentacles.
And now we're moving to Chakma, which is wisdom. So that's going to be interesting.
Which
So,
number 2 is the High Priestess as well within the majors. So there's a connection too.
Right.
What we have here is the keynote of harmonious polarization. The two of polarization has taken place, but it is harmonious, and therefore it is generally quite benevolent. You will find that in these highly spiritual areas, often the sort of more feeling-toned cards like cups and wands will be more beneficent than the more form-oriented suits such as pentacles and swords. Why is that? Well, we'll start with pentacles, and that will give us a little idea. 2 of pentacles. There we have a medieval fellow who appears to be something like a juggler, playing with the 2 coins, or 2 pentacles. There is an ocean in the background, and you get the feeling that he has perhaps a little bit of a difficult time keeping everything in balance. So what does that mean? Harmonious polarization, which I mentioned before, in physicality is difficult. Things don't stay in balance physically very long. It's contrary to the way that the physical world works. A balanced and harmonious and wonderful condition is not the rule in the manifest world. Quite the contrary of it is the rule. To keep things balanced in the world, you have to engage in an adroit juggling of elements and of forces. in order to keep your bills paid, unless you happen to have an overabundance of material resources, which I somewhat doubt that most of you possess, present myself included. It's a constant effort of sort of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. And so that is to a large extent what the Two of Pentacles means. The balancing, the juggling, the maneuvering to keep things in a working and harmonious order in the physical world. But on the other hand, it appears to be successful. He hasn't dropped any of them. So it's not a malefic picture, but a picture of some difficulty, because a harmonious polarization is not easy at the physical level.
Well, this one, I think that the most prominent thing that we see here is the infinity symbol with the green. I don't see the snake swallowing his tail, but definitely the infinity sign that we also see in the Magician and the major arcana.
And then that idea that you're constantly adjusting and the waters are up and down, and that idea of a dynamism and a balance in the physical world was very useful from Dr. Heller's commentary.
And the position of the hands also are reminiscent of the Magician, and the reference to the Hermetic adage of as above, so below.
It's interesting where his focus is at. It's on the lower end of the spectrum rather than the higher end of the spectrum, kind of how we sometimes go through life and we kind of see, how we're at the lowest point rather than we're at the highest point of our physicality.
And looks like that might be the one he's most likely to be dropping.
Yeah.
Right. And then the feet are kind of dancing a bit. So there's that idea of just constant motion to keep things balanced. It's impossible to do it while standing still, which was a good thing to
And that's echoed by the two ships that are being tossed up and down in the background.
Mm-hmm.
At the top of the tree of life, as in the aces, all that symbolic energy is unfettered and uncomplicated. Early after that, even the pentacles, which tend to be fairly stable or settled in the rest of the numbered cards and elsewhere. So this is still quite dynamic, and of course we are. It's already been mentioned. He's having to dance a jig while he balances these these two resources, and with all the action shown there, it is still quite dynamic and active. I'll start with, let's say, in a 3 card on the left, an advice against this card, and of course without the context of the rest of a Celtic cross or even the other 2 cards of a 3 card, a little bit whistling in the dark, but this would perhaps say, don't be so concerned about your limited resources. There's other things where your attention might be better spent, and of course on the right, then it's fairly obvious that do try to keep a grip on what you've got. Try to manage that dynamic balance. Doesn't mean necessarily to settle it down, but to really pay attention to the resources.
I've always kind of viewed it as whatever it pulls up for me, like a mini Wheel of Fortune, even though I know that, it's not 10, but kind of representing like a material back and forth, with the juggling.
It's like how we handle our bills each month. You got to rob a little from here to pay over there.
Right.
I think I'm looking at the leg he's resting on, and I see if you look at it Kabbalistically, it will be the pillar of severity. So it needs some form here to balance the situation, I think. And then I think it's interesting, it's the two, and it is the principle of so above, so below, if comparing to the Kybalion, because it's the second principle there also. So it's interesting, I think.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the magician card in my hand here.
Yeah.
And of course, he does have the belt looks very similar to this gentleman's belt, except
Yeah.
it is in the form of the circle with the snake holding his tail.
But the tail is on the other side on the two.
Yes, yes, it is. You're right.
Mirrored.
You're right.
And it's also interesting, the two pentacles is the spiritual pentacles. It's not a materialistical pentacle. It's with 1 point up, which also is interesting. Because it's like a balancing with the spirit in mind.
Yeah, the attitude of the pentacles is significant, certainly. Yeah.
Yeah.
With a point up rather than the point down.
Yeah.
So what say we visit with Dr. Heller the Two of Wands?
Wands is again being intuitive, being a more subtle, more internal kind of situation. The two becomes more benign and more promising. A sort of established personage, something like a medieval merchant, is standing and looking out over the sea where there are ships. And usually he holds a globe of the world in his hands. And this is the intuitive expectation of the future. The harmonious polarization in the intuition means that one is able to expect and to wait for one's ship to come in. And so what we have here is a good intuitive situation wherein one is standing back and sees the future developing and sees it developing in a benevolent manner. So the two at the intuitive level, again, has a much more positive kind of a keynote.
And so comments, I will start with, it's kind of interesting to compare the two with the three. Some of us have perhaps observed that with the Three of Wands, that would almost be like the ships are returning. It's a further development. The ships that were sent out in the Two of Wands are now returning. But I very much like that, looking to the future.
I was going to say, it's fascinating to me that one of the wands is kind of anchored there with a clasp, like a metal clasp. Sort of like, your intuitive nature needs to have like a baseline that isn't kind of mobile, like the one on the left.
There's a distinction also between the Two and the Three of Wands, in that the Three has a similar stance, looking out across the waters kind of thing, but it's in a very natural setting, whereas this is in a very established setting. So that's an interesting distinction. You also have the lily and the rose here, very present in a seal. And this idea of someone very that balance, or perhaps materially stable as they look out into whatever is next.
Yes, I see it a bit Kabbalistically. I see the two pillars there, and I see he is holding in the pillar of which one? It will be the pillar of mercy if I am standing as he does, and he has the pillar of severity behind his back, and I see it like the unity is in Keter and the duality is born in Chokmah, and the duality is behind his back. So he hasn't realized yet, I think, that the duality are there, because it is in the Three of Wands. There are 3 pillars there, and he has also there's been one more pillar there. So, but here it is 2 pillar, and it seems like he is finding a way, but he doesn't realize the full situation.
And is he, by where he's standing, is he kind of being the middle pillar of conciliation himself?
Yeah. I think he is. When I look at it, it will be that way, because I have elaborated with backing into the picture or going his way, and I think I should go his way there. This is card I have had very difficult to read in readings, because it hasn't been connected to me in a way that I can immediately see what it means. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think this shows that whatever the adventure is that he has launched, it remains to be seen how it's going to come out. So things this represents things are up in the air, whereas as Allison points out, the resolution is approaching. Where it looks like his ships are coming back in. In fact, the ships are entirely implied rather than shown on this card. But it seems that we all see that. And what do we make of the lilies and the roses?
They are the same that in the Magician, isn't there? Isn't it lily and roses there also?
Yes, and it's
That
also
is correct.
the
Yeah.
aces have the lilies in the Ace of Pentacles. I
Yeah,
believe, so here's the Magician. I'll put in the Ace of Pentacles. I believe that's on the bower. Are lilies and roses, and lilies in the foreground and roses on the bower.
Right.
And then those mountains again. Those mountains of attainment.
So those are a theme themselves, aren't they?
Yes, indeed. Recurring motif.
Yeah. And there is a little house there also, a white house down there in the valley.
Yeah, and some little buildings in the distance as well.
Yeah.
Too. There's some kind of it's a settled area. It's been domesticated. You've got plowed fields, you got roads, you got structures and everything, which is very distinct from the 3. So I think that perhaps we're dealing from a place of establishment. So as opposed to the 1, which is kind of all potential, now in the 2, we have an idea of material settledness and then future plans on the basis of that settledness.
And he appears to be standing on like the battlements of a wall, maybe a walled city or something like that.
And the clasp that you, Michael, discovered is interesting, but because that clasp is then on the pillar of severity, looking at it Kabbalistically, if you have it the same way as he has. And then it is there, it won't blow away. It's always there because it is a clasp there.
Maybe the severity has already been accomplished, and now the mercy is something which is
Also,
the newer thing grasped.
Yes, but it's also always behind his back because it won't blow away.
2 of Swords. That's a little bit more dicey, because when we come to swords, we have, of course, an instrument of conflict, something that works best within a conflicted situation. This is probably about as good as it gets with swords, in the 2 and in the 4 also. Because what we have is a kind of temporary, not very conscious balance. A feminine figure with a blindfold over her eyes is sitting by a seashore, holding the 2 swords that seem to be sort of balancing each other out. So for the time being, the conflictual nature is in balance. But you get the feeling that just give it some time and the one sword, like the one shoe, is going to drop. And then conflict will be there, but conflict is held up. It's sort of like an armistice, a temporary peace, there is not going to be any battle. The battling forces are held up.
So I will jump in on this one because I've had so much fun experience with it in divination context, and it just so often seemed to be talking about a person's kind of fear of an unknown threat, and it's a catch-22 situation where the person, if they would lower their their armament by 50%, take one and stick it in the ground, and then you'd have a free hand to lift the blindfold, and then you would be able to see what the threats may or may not even be. But it's a static holding pattern, a position where you can't see and you can't move, and your thoughts are full of possible dangers at hand, and so that's just it's always such a rewarding card in a reading. It sheds so much light so often for me in my history of readings, for the querent, for the readee.
I think that idea that you can't even so unless you lower your sword, you cannot see clearly. So your defenses are keeping you from seeing the whole situation. And so what's going to come? You cannot unveil your eyes until you lay down a sword, at least one of them. And so that's one aspect of it. And this other idea that sometimes you can get very paralyzed with decisions, or you can refuse to see so that you don't have to make a decision. So depending on where this were placed in a reading, it might advise you to, if it were in the no position, for example, it would probably say, now it's really probably time for you to shift, to open your eyes, to make a decision. Come on now, get off the pot, as they would say. And in a positive, in the advice placement, it might be to excuse me, wait for more data. Not everything has been revealed. You're not seeing everything clearly yet. So it would be good to take a pause and get more information before you would go further with decisions. Those are some interpretations I would go with for this card. Always depending on the context.
Yeah, this looks like a truce in some sort of a battle of some sort to me.
Different than 5, where you're walking away, where it's like a defeat in battle or some kind of giving up. This is more a decision. It's more of a driven decision from the mental place. Sorry, excuse my interrupting, Jerry.
No. You chimed in right as I was through with that. And then we see a moon that's either waxing or waning up above there. What do we make of that?
I think it's kind of interesting because that's the most direct connection to the High Priestess card with that crescent moon, because that's under her right foot, I think, in the High Priestess card. So maybe some sort of connection, or I guess it's under her left there.
There is also the water behind the whale. There is not the whale, there is only water.
So I don't know if that moon is representative of something maybe secret or hidden. I mean, obviously she's blindfolded, so she can't see what's in front of her, but behind her,
just partiality too.
Some sort of secret that's maybe not fully realized or fully understood.
Of course, if we think of the moon card, where in the moonlight everything looks unreal, looks very different, and it's rather difficult to discern reality. That's also the predicament with the blindfold and just not, you know, the kind of the truth is hidden.
Yeah, I think it being that, and I think the same thing with the with that moon crescent in the priestess cards. Is there's something that's undecided. It's still in flux, and I see her as being very still undecided herself, and being armed against whatever might go wrong. And I usually see in this kind of a hesitance to make a decision. And of course, this is the mental area that we're in here with the swords.
But she is also in balance because the position is balanced, but she's also armed. And it's like she doesn't have to be armed because she is already balanced.
Interesting that the cloud formation in the background is also balanced. It's pretty much even on all around.
There's a book about, and I haven't read it for a really long time, about the miners. I think Dr. Heller did a forward to that book with Isabel Radow Kliegman, and she just points out that there's a few cards where there's like a stage in front of the background, and we're seeing a few of them right here. We've got each of the twos with the, so we've got the Two of Wands that we saw, who's on this structure, this 3D, you know, implied place that they are, but these other cards are on this stage which separates them from whatever is the natural world behind them. And she doesn't assign a hard meaning to that, but is worth considering that these particular cards aren't necessarily integrated into the landscape, but they're separated out. And that might be relevant with whatever the reading context might be as well.
Funny you mentioned the cloud. I'm looking at this kind of deck rather than my deck, which has the same back as the ones that are in our program here. And this one doesn't have the cloud thing there.
Yeah, the variation in color on that universal deck, there's a lot more gradation and shading and ombre and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I know that, Brian, it's your fondest set of images. That's the one that you like. It's very different from the Albano, where the sky is orange, for example, in a lot of the ones. Same drawings, but different filled colors.
Yeah, I think the Albano deck might have been colored in a artist's room that was lit by black lights. Remember when black lights were very popular, and certainly though the Albano weight deck it has rather those colors that jump right out.
And that red-green thing, which is fabulous for anybody who's colorblind, right?
But yeah, that's a good point. That the different weight revisions, this being the universal, the radiant deck, which is really my favorite in terms of, I mean, it's almost distractingly beautiful. You know, you're trying to do a reading and then you're thinking, oh, look at that beautiful card. But
you love it.
I do. Well, I'm perfectly happy with this this universal deck, and because it follows that pattern of having almost tracing paper refining of the line art. And it's beautiful colors, but the reason that we chose this over the radiant, I guess I should say I chose it, because it was a little bit trouble in the display that without a lot of Photoshop manipulation to bring in the numbers and the titles. I mean, for example, on the radiant deck, the title of the High Priestess and the numbers are not within the actual artwork, so that had created a bit of difficulty for readers who were on the spot and had to ask now what's that card? What number is that?
Yeah, no, it's,
So-
it's a lot of the medium drive the decisions a lot of the time.
Yeah, so shall we visit our buddies, the Cups? And Dr. Heller's commentary, here we go.
In cups, we have a very beautiful image. We have a couple, a man and a woman holding the chalices before them, and out of them arises the image of the red-winged lion of alchemy. And so we really have here a picture of emotional harmonizing. So this is perhaps the par excellence card of love, of loving relationship at the emotional level. Whenever this comes up, it certainly augurs well for emotional interaction and emotional relationship between people. And also, I would say, certain kinds of, at least partially, spiritual results arising therefrom. When you have the harmonious polarization, this is something that the emotional nature is affinitized to. In fact, that is what our emotions are striving for. What the emotional nature is attracted to most is to bring about some kind of a harmonious conjunction. So that's a very beneficent, a very good card.
Which are you comparing it to?
To the Fool. Look at the tunica.
Oh,
Fool. It looks like the same tunica, but perhaps it's not, but it's similarities.
Yeah. Well, you have these reminiscences, and so it's that it's everyman kind of idea as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I compare it also to the Lovers with the positions and the angel above. And then I also think the L'Oreals is interesting because I'm looking at that trying to combine it with the Sephiras, with the green Sephira that there should be Netza, and the red that should be Gebura. And it can be some sort of diagonal way between them.
And then the figure on the right is reaching out. So there's that idea of that you have to, you can't just stand in front of each other. There has to be some kind of an opening or a beginning.
And there is also a blue over tunica on the lady. So Kabbalistically, it could be to Hesed in the color. So she's both green and blue. So it's like it is both Hod and Chesed. So it's that way between the Sephiras.
and is that in the background there, where you see that little spot of red? It looks like it's a white house with a red roof.
Yeah,
what you
it is. It looks like that. Yeah.
Of course, she's wearing red shoes and he's wearing a red crown.
Yeah.
Sort of like you have a couple and then you have one house in the background, sort of kind of showing that harmonious living together. While with the other cards you had, kind of indicative of, waiting like for the ship to come in. You had industry or a well-developed area, and with the Pentacles, the ships, kind of being material things. It's interesting that the sword, in the sword background, I was going to say this earlier, it actually has no human-made imagery behind it.
Right.
No.
Interesting that the twos, the action, as it were, the dynamic is quite subtle, except for the Pentacles is the most clearly dynamic, and but the dynamic of this, the Two of Cups is the reaching out, and that maybe looks like he has just stepped forward into that position that we capture in this image. But interesting that most of the twos have a relatively subtle, the dynamics are hidden, but they're certainly with the potential of the flowing forth from Kether and heading on down the tree. There's going to be plenty of overt dynamics later in the progression.
They both have white under the color white under the tunicas.
Is that innocence?
It could
white?
be, yeah, it could also be a connection to Keter in some way, that they both.
And it's interesting. I was just thumbing through the cup cards, and look how different the cup card is on that ace. It's very much a chalice-shaped cup.
Yeah.
And the cups on all the rest of the cards.
Is this what you meant? Did you mean the Ace of Cups, Jerry?
That's what I meant, was the Ace of Cups, yes. So yeah, that's a chalice-shaped card, and then a cup rather, and the rest of them have that kind of a triangular square kind of bottom to them.
We talked about that last time. It was Angela, I think, that was mentioning the cup in the ace looks almost like a ceremonial cup, like a grail cup.
Well, and that's what Dr. Heller compared it to, was the Grail cup.
Yeah.
Or the chalice at the Eucharist, where the
right
both
well,
the
and that's also supposed to be based on the Grail cup, isn't it?
Yeah.
The chalice in the Eucharist.
Yes, that I would say it's very, very sacramental. With spiritually, the wine and water consecrated become a gift of life towards spiritual life.
And isn't that ceremony supposed to be a derivative of the Last Supper?
Oh, absolutely, exactly.
Yeah.
That is the Christian symbolism.
And of course, the descending dove.
Well, we could adjourn.
All right, guys, I will see you at our next foray, and thank you for an afternoon of learning here. Have a good one. From Stockholm to Manchester to Orange County to, where are you, Leicester? Where are you calling?
Well, 30 miles from Manchester.
Uh-huh.
In the north.
Uh-huh. And hope everybody's staying warm. So see you next time.